I've been using the Galaxy Watch 8 for a whole weekend now, and I have some thoughts that I want to share with you in this video. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist specializing in biological data analysis. So today we're going to take a look at the bunch of data I gathered with the Galaxy Watch 8, mostly focusing on heart rate tracking, some sleep stage tracking, and potentially also some GPS tracking, but this I actually still have to analyze, but I'd be super interested to see those results as well. Now, as you might have seen in my initial review, the heart rate tracking looks surprisingly good on the Galaxy Watch 8, but also on the updated Galaxy Watch 7, so updated in terms of firmware, not in terms of hardware. So today we're going to take a look at a bunch of data for the Galaxy Watch 8 to see if this was a consistent pattern, so to see if consistently the heart rate tracking is better than in previous generations of hardware and firmware, or if this was just a fluke and just by chance those few exercises that I did were actually better than past results. Now, I actually didn't analyze all the data yet, so I'm going to be as surprised as you to see those results. But first we need even more data. So now I'm going to go on a run and afterwards I'm going to do some more bike rides. I actually have to go to work to pick up a new lens that I ordered and some other packages. So it's a good excuse to go on some bike rides and collect some more heart rate data. And in addition, like I said, we'll also take a look at this sleep stage tracking data. Let me show you how I analyze that. So for the sleep stage tracking of the Galaxy Watch 8, I compared that result to the Z-Max EEG headband, which is a headband that can actually measure my brain waves and was specifically designed for sleep stage tracking. And then I have to analyze it using some computer magic and computer code, which is on this Windows laptop right here. So I actually specifically recently bought this Windows laptop right here in order to be able to do those kind of analysis. My old Windows laptop was super cheap and breaking down, so now I'm better able to do those analysis again. I did run into one issue, so I collected 2 nights of data with the Galaxy Watch 8 and one of them had a bad reference night, so the Z-Max somehow got disconnected. You can actually see that in this plot right here. You can see there are some gaps in the data. So I only have 1 night of data to work with, and this was a night where I went to bed late because I had to finish that first video. So this will be a very preliminary analysis, but I'm still curious to see what the patterns say. And then in a week or 2 I'll do my full comprehensive analysis of both the Galaxy Watch 8 but also the Galaxy Watch Ultra, which was supposed to be delivered yesterday, but again the mailman didn't show up, so hopefully I'll get that Monday, and also the Galaxy Watch Classic, and then I'll also collect a bunch of data with those. But today we'll be focusing on the Galaxy Watch 8, and I actually really like the design of this watch. So let's hope that the heart rate improvements are consistent. But first, like you're used to, I really need a coffee, and then I'm gonna go on a run. I just came back from my 9K run and it went pretty well. And looking at my heart rate on the watch, it seemed to be relatively accurate, but I'll be interested to see what the results actually are. But first, when I came back, I saw that the calculations for this sleep stage analysis were done, and these are actually super interesting. So I first want to discuss those, then I'll cycle to work. I'll also do an extra weightlifting session, and then we'll look at the heart rate tracking results for the Galaxy Watch 8. But let's look at the sleep tracking first. And here we have that overview, which looks surprisingly good. I'm really impressed by this. Again, this is just for a single night, but it looks very promising. On the top again we have the sleep stages according to the Z-Max EEG headband, which is a reference that I mentioned previously, which can actually measure brain waves and was specifically designed for sleep stage tracking. That's along the top right here. We're going to ignore this awake column because the Z-Max tends to detect a lot of short awake moments that aren't really awake moments. This is a bit less informative, but we're going to focus on deep sleep, light sleep and REM sleep. So these first 3. And on the left right here, we have the sleep stages as detected by the Galaxy Watch 8. Now, if we first focus on deep sleep agreement, we see that about 80% of what the Z-Max said was deep sleep was also deep sleep according to the Galaxy Watch 8. So that's pretty good actually. Light sleep agreement is slightly lower, but still pretty good at about 75%. And REM sleep agreement is the worst, but still pretty good. This is where many devices struggle. And at least for this single night, so very preliminary, this looks very good for the Galaxy Watch 8. So overall, very promising again. We can actually plot the individual night over this. And right here, you can see that specific night itself with the clock time along the horizontal axis. And as I said, I went to bed quite late to make that first Galaxy Watch video. And we have the sleep stages along the vertical axis, with on the top the EEG device and on the bottom the Galaxy Watch 8. And as you can see, deep sleep agreement is almost perfect, so I'm really happy with that. And as I said, where most devices struggle is REM sleep agreement, and this is actually quite good for the Galaxy Watch 8. So I likely had 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 REM sleep segments, and most of these were very similarly detected by the EEG device. It just detected some extra REM sleep here in the beginning, which is typical for many devices. Now, to understand why this is, you actually go through several sleep cycles each night, each one starting with light sleep and deep sleep and ending in REM sleep. And my first sleep cycle typically has very little to no REM sleep, at least by classical scoring measures. And most people would have this, so the Galaxy Watch 8 expected it and put it right here. But as you can see, according to the EEG device, I didn't have it right there. But the other ends of the sleep cycle, so one right here, one right here, and one right here, these were all detected by the Galaxy Watch 8. Only here near the end, where I was going in and out of sleep, was there some disagreement. But overall, this is really good. For this single night, at least, I'm quite impressed. And we can actually compare this performance to that of many other devices out there. And you can see that in this overview right here, where the more to the top right the device is, the better is the agreement with the reference device. Where along the horizontal axis, we have the average agreement over the individual sleep stages. And on the vertical axis, we have the agreement with the worst sleep stage. And all devices marked in green were tested against the Z-Max EEG headband, so the one we used in this video. And the Galaxy Watch 8, if this one night would be representative for the overall sleep stage tracking, would end up right here. And it's somewhere in the same area as where we find the different Fitbit devices and the Whoop strap. So not quite as good as, for instance, the Apple Watch, the 8 Sleep Pod, potentially the Oura Ring is still a bit better, and also the Nuku Hour Sleep 2 app. So those 4 brands are the best. But if this is true and the results stay roughly the same, that would mean that the Galaxy Watch is in the second tier of devices together with different Fitbit and Google devices, like for instance the Pixel Watch or the Fitbit Charge 6 for instance, and also the Whoop strap. Now again, this is a very preliminary result, but I just found it so interesting that I wanted to share with you. But take this with a big grain of salt, because it might fully change if I have many more nights of data. Now, regular viewers will know my general recommendations for sleep tracking. So the best devices, at least on me, are the 8 Sleep Pod, which is my favorite sleep improvement device. It can actively cool and heat each side of the bed independently. So if you are a cold or hot sleeper and your partner is the opposite, you can set each side individually, which is great, especially in summer, because it just overheats so easily. And I like being cooled both by the blanket and by the bed itself. So that's what the 8 Sleep Pod does as well. And it has amazing sleep stage tracking. It's very expensive, so only get it if you can really afford it. But if you want the best possible discount out there, you can use my affiliate link up here or down here, and you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. Now also the Apple Watch has always been really good at sleep stage tracking, again on me at least. And the same is true for the Oura Ring, though it's potentially slightly worse. I would still count it as being in the first tier of devices. And there's also the Sleep 2 or Nuku app. But if it is true that the Galaxy Watch 8 ends up here, it's really in the second tier of devices, and it could be something I could recommend. Again, I want to wait for my full review to really recommend it, but this is a good first indication. So that's the sleep stage tracking performance, looking very promising, just as we saw for my initial test of the heart rate tracking performance. So now we're gonna look at a bunch more heart rate data to see if that at least holds up. But first I have to collect some more. So I'm gonna cycle back and forth to work to pick up that new lens and also a bunch of other things. And I'm also gonna do a quick weightlifting session. And then we're gonna look at those results. After that, I wanna take a look at the GPS tracking results from my run, because I actually ran in a bunch of circles, and I wanna see if those circles really nicely overlap with each other, or if there's a lot of deviation going on there. It was kind of boring. I was really running in circles, but at least we have some data to look at. So I'm gonna quickly go cycling, weightlifting, and then we'll take a look at those heart rate tracking results. And let's start again with the results for indoor cycling, which you can see right here. And I did one extra indoor cycling session now. So these are the results for a total of 2 indoor cycling sessions, and they still look pretty decent. Maybe there's a tiny bit more deviation in total than we saw before, but overall with this correlation 0.96, that's still looking pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's definitely good enough. And we can even see that better if we look at the individual sessions. So let's now also take a look at that second session. And here we have the first session that we saw before in the first video. And this looked pretty good with some minor deviations like right here. But let's now take a look at the second session. And this looks basically the same with one moment of a bit more deviation, but otherwise just good enough, I would say. But what about how this compares to the competition now? So we had a correlation of 0.96. And if we compare that to the competition, it's somewhere in the middle of all devices. So not amongst the absolute worst, not amongst the somewhat bad, but amongst the decently performing watches. There are definitely still better devices out there, but with a correlation of 0.96, it's definitely also good enough. So for indoor cycling, I can recommend the Galaxy Watch 8. But what about for running? This will be an exciting one, so let's take a look at that. By the way, I realized I went over this a bit quickly, so just in 10 seconds for those of you who aren't familiar with these plots, the correlation value cannot be higher than 1, and 1 is basically a perfect value. So these watches are ordered from worst on the left to best on the top right, and the Galaxy Watch 8 is marked here in red, so it's really somewhere in the middle of all devices. But generally, I say a correlation above 0.95 or higher is good enough for heart rate tracking. And with the correlation of 0.96, the Galaxy Watch 8 falls into this category. But again, let's take a look at the results for running. And here we have that result for running where we're starting to see the first issues. Quick interruption, as regular viewers will know, I'm actually more of a cyclist than a runner, but I recently got into running. And the way I was able to do that is using the Runner app. Now, Runner is my favorite app for getting running plans and live coaching during my runs. I'm honestly still somewhat of a newbie when it comes to running, and Runner has been amazing for helping me set up a running routine that doesn't overburden me because I'm relatively fit, so tend to do too much in the beginning, but still helps me progress. And for me, I'm first getting to my fastest 10K and then training for a half marathon. So whatever your goal is, doing a marathon, half marathon, 10K, 5K, Runner can help you. And if you want the best deal possible, you can use my affiliate link up here or down here, and you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. But back to the results. So most of the times the points are close to the blue line. So again, we have the reference value along the horizontal axis and the Galaxy Watch 8 along the vertical axis. And if the two would perfectly agree, all values should be along this blue line right here. And we see quite a big cloud of points here below the blue line, indicating that at least for part of the run, the Galaxy Watch 8 detected a too low heart rate. And the correlation is also quite a bit lower now at 0.7. But let's take a look at the individual run to see how bad this actually is. And here we have the data for the run with again the Galaxy Watch 8 in red and the reference in blue-green. And you can see that the Galaxy Watch 8 mostly followed along somewhat with my heart rate, but there were drops sometimes like right here, but also smaller ones like right here and right here. And my suspicion is that it might be some form of cadence lock, where it's locking onto the frequency of my running, so the frequency at which I'm taking steps, and not the actual frequency of the heart rate. So maybe because those two are somewhat close, that's why the Galaxy Watch is struggling more for running than it did for instance, indoor cycling. But to see if this is at least a somewhat valid assumption, let's now take a look at those two extra bike rides as well, to see if it has any issues here or if this is still good. And here we have that first bike ride of today. And again, similar to what we saw for the original bike ride, so this one right here and this one right here, we actually see a pretty decent agreement of the Galaxy Watch in red with the reference device in blue-green. So basically it's following along good enough. There are some minor deviations, but this one is good enough. And also this ride right here is more or less good enough, with one moment where it had a delay in picking up on an increase in heart rate. But overall, for cycling indoors and cycling outdoors, I would say that the Galaxy Watch 8 appears to be good enough, which is somewhat surprising then to me that running, at least this run, the Galaxy Watch 8 performed worse. Usually watches struggle more with cycling than with running, but maybe this is that form of cadence lock. Now I do want to close off with that weightlifting session, so let's take a look at that chest and tricep session I did today. And this mostly also looks similar to what we saw in my original testing. So many of those peaks in heart rate that you can see in blue-green were not picked up on by the Galaxy Watch 8. So you can see that the red line often stays lower than that blue-green line. So far to me this indicates that for cycling indoors and outdoors, the Galaxy Watch 8 is good enough at tracking my heart rate at least. We cannot say for sure if it will perform the exact same way on you. And that for weightlifting and at least this running session, it wasn't performing well enough. So maybe some form of cadence lock. But what about the GPS tracking performance? So could it track my route during my run? Well, let's have a look. So right here you can see those circles that I ran in. This is Park Belvedere, quite nice park in Vienna. And let's see how close those different circles were. So on this side of the park, it appears to be a bit easier. So the lines appear to be a bit closer together. Here there appears to be quite a bit more deviation. And this is also generally what I observe right here, where there's a big wall. Many devices struggle to keep my pace consistent on the screen because I actually know I'm running at a more or less consistent pace, and then the pace gets messed up all of a sudden right here. Overall, it doesn't look that bad. Most lines are still somewhat close together. And of course, sometimes there might have been a half-meter deviation about where I ran exactly. But let's compare this now to the Garmin Fenix 7 Pro. So here we have the Samsung Galaxy Watch 8. And right here we have the results for the Garmin Fenix 7 Pro with GPS set to all plus multiband. So the most accurate way Garmin can measure GPS. And the Garmin does look a bit better. The lines are closer together. There are a bit more wiggles, and that's because Garmin doesn't smooth their GPS signal. I suspect that Samsung smooths their GPS signal after it's been measured. And this is more or less the raw Garmin signal, which I would say is a bit better than the Galaxy Watch signal. So again, this is Garmin, and this is the Samsung Galaxy Watch 8. So there's definitely a bit more deviation there. Again, let's switch back to Garmin. So the lines are closer together. Also on this side, the Garmin Fenix 7 struggles more than on this side. Overall, still a decent performance by the Galaxy Watch 8, especially since it probably doesn't know there are any roads here, so it has to rely on its original signal. It cannot sort of bump my GPS signal to the road. I suspect that for most people this will be good enough, but you're not getting the exact same performance as you would be getting from a dedicated sports watch. Okay, so that was a lot of updated data. I went through it a bit more quickly than I normally would. So if you have any questions about how to interpret this data, either let me know in the comments below or check out some of my other videos. I usually describe everything in detail, but somehow I also partially forgot to do it. But I think it's still pretty clear because many of you know what these graphs look like. But what is my overall conclusion, at least at the moment, for the Galaxy Watch 8, now that we have a bit more data also on sleep tracking and also on the heart rate tracking performance? Well, I think many of my initial conclusions stay the same. For cycling indoors and outdoors, the Galaxy Watch 8 appears to be a decent performer. But what about running? Well, there I'm a bit unsure. I need to do a few more runs, also some intervals, because these kind of consistent runs also artificially deflate the correlation. So I want to do 3 more interval runs as well. But there I have my doubts about how good it is. I would also be interested if any of you already have an experience with the Galaxy Watch 8. Did you order it? Did you receive it? And did it do well or not for running or for any of the other exercises? And as always, for weightlifting, I don't recommend using a smartwatch, but especially not the Galaxy Watch. This is not a good performer there. An Apple Watch, for instance, does much better than a Galaxy Watch, both for weightlifting and for heart rate tracking in general, honestly. Then for sleep stage tracking, so far I'm pleasantly surprised. I don't know if there's actually a new algorithm or if somehow I got lucky and this night was just tracked well. I'll track it for maybe 7 more nights or so and then share an updated result of the Galaxy Watch 8, but of course also with the Galaxy Watch Ultra and the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, but those are still delayed and being shipped to me, and I bought all of them myself with my own money. And then finally for the GPS tracking performance, I think it's decent. It's not the best GPS tracking I've ever had, but my first impression is that it's probably good enough for many of you. The pace is reliable enough. You will not get like Garmin or Coros level performance, but probably it's decent and sort of sufficient for many of you out there. But of course, I'll be doing a full cycling test as well. And then there are some remaining features that I discussed in my initial video on the Galaxy Watch that I still need to test, like this sort of skin aging thing. This is something I have to look into a bit more and then set up some kind of testing for. At the moment, I cannot really comment on this. I don't think it's also that useful for many of you, but I would be interested to try it. I think it's probably mostly a gimmick that many of you will try once, maybe twice, and then give up on, or what do you think? This is my overall conclusion at the moment. It feels like, let me sit you down. It feels like the Galaxy Watch 8 actually has promise this time. It's still not quite as good as, for instance, a Pixel Watch or an Apple Watch, but it's getting closer and closer, it feels like. I don't think there have been major changes in the hardware component, but it does feel like Samsung is working on the firmware to make that better and better. We already see that somewhat potentially for the heart rate tracking, and also the sleep stage tracking appears to be different. I actually didn't check any release notes on any firmware updates. I have to check that to see if there's any news on that. Maybe Samsung actually confirmed that they made some changes there. I'll be making my updated review on the Galaxy Watch 8 in a week or two, and then of course also for the Galaxy Watch Ultra and the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic. Now you can support this channel in various ways if you want. It would be great if you just like, subscribe and comment. That's a great start. If you can afford it and if you're willing to becoming a channel member would be great. You get early access to some of my videos and actively support the channel. But you can also use one of the different affiliate links in the description below. If you ever buy anything on Amazon and you first click on my link, that already gives me a small affiliate fee that helps support this channel. So if you're gonna buy the Galaxy Watch, if you use my Amazon link, that would be amazing. Or if you want to buy the 8 Sleep Pod and get the best discount possible, or if you want to get a Whoop strap, an Aura ring, another device, or like I said, anything at all on Amazon for that matter, there are different links in the description below. Now, given that you watched this whole video on the Galaxy Watch 8, check out this video on the Pixel Watch 3 or this video on the best sleep stage trackers. Thank you so much.